All right, hi guys. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be talking to a vet, and we're going to be talking about immunizations and the military. So I'm going to wait for some people to jump on. There's something I'm going to do different. It's not going to be completely live because Facebook likes to take down my videos. And if I put in the Zoom, it will also take it down. So it's gonna look a little ghetto, but I promise you guys are gonna get the information that you need. So I'm gonna switch the over, and I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves. Okay, hold on. Okay, and if you guys can do a mic check also, if you guys cannot hear them, please let me know, and we'll get it going on another live. Oh, yes, always. The kids always want to know what's going on. Okay, so if you want to introduce yourself, and then we have some people watching, so we're going to get to it.
Alrighty, my name is James, and I've been in the U.S. Army for 15 years now, and my wife has been with me throughout the entire time. And I've been stationed in places like Alaska, Italy, and now in North Carolina.
Great. Are you active duty right now? Did you say?
Yes, I'm currently active duty.
Okay, they can hear you. Okay, all right. And then you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, my name is Johanna, and we're actually celebrating our 13th wedding anniversary yesterday. So I've been in for that many years, for 13 years.
Congratulations. Long haul. Great. Okay, so let's just get to it, because we have a lot of very curious people to know what their options are going into the military, and let's just jump right into it. So how long exactly, James, have you been in it?
I'm sorry?
How long have you been active duty?
Oh, I've been active duty 15 years.
Okay, and then did you go in already exempting, or what's the backstory to it?
Okay, so I joined the military without any exemptions at all. So I got the entire round of basic training, shots, and all of the shots that are required throughout the years as routine yearly shots and or boosters. That includes the entire anthrax series and all of those yearly boosters, typhoid. I've even gotten the yellow fever and some of the optional ones that are not necessarily mandatory for conventional forces, but that was during my time with Special Operations Forces while I was assigned to them.
Okay.
But yeah, my shots have been completely up to date up to the point when I started refusing vaccinations in 2017.
Okay, and then how did that happen?
So my very first experience with vaccination was with the flu shot, and so and the anthrax shot. So my wife and I started looking into vaccinations and what's in them and the components in them and the aborted fetal tissues. So it struck me that this is not something that I want to do, and I started looking into it a little bit myself with the help of Johanna. And armed with a little bit of information, I talked to the NCOIC of the SRP site, which is a soldier readiness processing site, which this is where you go to get all your stuff updated, vision, hearing, vaccinations, all that stuff. So I told them of my objections to the anthrax shot and the aborted fetal tissue within the shot, and it turns out I was a little bit off in my information. However, it was still an argument to not receive it, so he accepted my argument, and I successfully got out of the anthrax shot that day. However, I still got typhoid, so that was actually the very last vaccination I received was for typhoid.
Okay. And did you react to any of it? You said no, correct?
No, and feeling extremely, getting super sore in the area where they shot me. That was it.
I'm actually going to chime in because when I was looking into possible exemptions just in general, in December of 2016, everyone was due for their flu shot. And I remember, and I remember James saying he didn't want to get it, and I didn't want him to get it because every time he gets the flu shot, the Army doesn't have to deal with him. I have to deal with him because he ends up getting really, really sick, and just it's not good because I end up having to take care of like an adult, being really sick, lethargic, fever, chills, all of that. So he didn't want to get it, and they were actually threatening to take away his Christmas block leave if he did not get the flu shot. And I didn't think that was right. I'm like, they're threatening to take away his Christmas break essentially unless he got the flu shot. So that's when I started, hey, how can he get out of flu shots being in the military?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led us up to where we are now. And that's like basically that got this ball rolling, so that he can get out of whatever vaccines that he wanted to get out of, and what led us to the military exemptions for religious exemptions within the military. So that's what got it started. They threatened us.
Of course they did.
They threatened to take away Christmas break or Christmas leave if you didn't get the shot, and that's what started it.
Now, were you told about any adverse reactions, possible reactions that can happen? How long after you received the vaccine did they send you out to wherever you were stationed?
As far as now we're referencing like those basic training shots.
Right, yeah.
It would have been the fastest I would have gone to basic training was about 5 days. So I would have entered basic training with all of the crud that would have developed from all of those vaccines. However, in my case, I was delayed. There was an overflow of people entering the service, and there simply weren't enough. The class was full, so to speak. So I waited for the next one. So I ended up waiting another 14 days to go into my actual basic training. But it would have been 5 days after receiving that multitude of shots.
Did they tell you anything at all that can possibly happen?
No, they told us nothing. They just said, get in line, drop trowel, what have you, in order to receive all of those vaccines at once.
And do you know how many you got at once?
I want to say somewhere around 5, including the Bicillin shot, the one that goes into your butt.
That peanut butter one. So let's talk about exemptions. So I have a lot of people who have kids going into the military, and they're terrified. They do not want to get these vaccines. So how does a parent or an enlisted person go about doing this?
So with there are regulations within the military that allow you to go through a process and put together a packet that will allow you to exempt yourself from vaccinations within the military. And it all starts with Army Regulation 600-20. That would be the first step into looking into how to put together the packet, for exemptions. So the very first step is to declare that you are against vaccinations with a personal statement. And there are examples of that, and basically you lay out your belief and why you believe vaccination is against your religious beliefs, and this is specifically for a religious exemption. That's the very first thing that you got to do, and then there are other things which include a medical counseling from a Army doctor,
Mm-hmm.
a counseling from a Army chaplain that kind of covers your religious bases, if you will, and then you need a statement from your personal clergy, and this is the part where it kind of gets hairy, but I'm not going to go into that. But you need something from a personal clergy person, and then finally you need a counseling from a commander and a approval or disapproval from that commander.
Okay. Now, what happens if you get denied the first time? What's a person to do?
So if you're looking to get into the military and you get denied, you can appeal, you should be able to appeal to the higher command, like his commander.
Mm-hmm.
And because for active duty personnel, for myself being active duty, if my commander rejected it, I could appeal to my battalion, I could appeal to the brigade, I could appeal to division, I could go all the way to the Army G1, which is the Human Resources Command. And under the AR 600-20, it spells out that if the Army G1 says no, then you can appeal for a separation from the service based on their inability to service your religious exemption.
Okay.
Somebody coming into the military, it may be a little bit different. You know, there's a station commander, there's like a commander, the local battalion commander, and then it might go to the MEPS commander, the military entrance processing station commander. That might be the highest that it goes. I don't know how far it may or may not go after that.
If someone is deciding that they want to join the military without getting an exemption, they need to have all this stuff, a hard copy, and it has to be in your files. The exemption has to be in your file before you sign on the dotted line, because during basic, they're not going to care. No one's going to help you then. You have to get it all squared away right before you sign the contract, and that process usually takes about a month to get done. So I would suggest for anyone to go in to make sure that you at least get that ball rolling. A lot of it is actually going to be, you're going to be educating people, because more likely than not, the recruiter isn't going to know what you're talking about. So you're going to be, I would highly suggest you print out everything that you need. If you can find it all online, the document that James is talking about, the Army 440-562, excuse me. It covers the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Navy and Marines are usually together. So this is all you need, and it's, how many pages is this? Like 35 pages of information. It goes into exemptions for service member. It also goes into vaccine exemptions for dependents. So I would suggest printing this out, getting familiar with the regulations, and knowing what you need to talk about as you go through the process, so that it's all in your files. You don't need to fight with anyone in basic. You're good, and you'll be good to go.
Okay, so that one was 600-S20. Is that what you have?
The Army regulation would be 600-20.
Okay.
And
Yes,
the immunization regulation is 40-562. And that's listed as Army Regulation 40-562. For other ones, it may be listed differently. There's a whole bunch of different numbers for the other services. However, you can search it as that and find the same regulation.
Okay, great. And let's see. Someone was asking about the other branches, so you covered that. Now let's talk about dependents. So I have a lot of families who say we live on base. We see these doctors, and the doctors tell us that our children have to be vaccinated. This is just the way it is, and I have to be vaccinated. We can't turn it down because we are military family on base. Is this correct information?
No, it's not correct. Dependents are allowed exemptions. However, my daughter is not. She doesn't go to school on post, so I know that they've changed things fairly recently for schools on post. So I would make sure that you know what those are. Because as far as I understand, the flu vaccine is the only one that's mandatory for DoD schools. But like I said, if it was me, I would just pull my kid out and go to a school off post. It's very simple. So I would just make sure that you know what those, to double check those. But dependents are not required to get vaccinated at all. Going overseas, if they need to go if they're PCS into Europe, they don't need vaccinations. If they PCS to one of the Asian countries, they don't need to get vaccinated either. I have heard of some branches threatening their command sponsorship for families if they don't get vaccinated, which is not okay at all. But there are ways around it where families can just fly over there and move over there without being command sponsorship. What that means is the military just won't pay for families to fly over there.
Gotcha.
Basically all it is doable. So I mean, there's ways around it, and you just gotta try to figure out what's the best thing for your family if something like that should happen.
So you're active duty, you get deployed out to Kabul or whatever you're going to go. Now, if you have a religious exemption, where does that leave you? Are they going to not send you? What is the case with that?
So with the system for the Army is called MedPros. It may or may not be the same for the other branches. However, for MedPros, when I get an exemption put into that system after having done my packet, I don't even pop up as needing vaccinations at all. So when they do the whole roundup of all of these people trying to get them ready to deploy, my name doesn't even come up as needing a vaccination. So I never have to worry about popping hot on the list or being on first sergeant's hit list of needing vaccinations like smallpox and anthrax and all this other junk. So it's really a non-issue when it comes to deploying, because they won't even know, because you're already out of the system, so to speak, because you never really come up on their list. So it's a non-issue for deploying.
Oh wow, that's good to know. Okay, I'm just trying to see if there's any questions. My video, of course, is getting shadow banned, so it's it's a process to get this up. So is there any advice that you want to give to our military going, at first, when you saw them, fellow soldiers getting vaccinated, what did you see? Did you see anybody react? Did you see anything that threw up a red flag of what's happening?
I've personally not seen very many reactions. I've seen a lot of something that may be linked to vaccinations, but it was kind of sporadic and it's not something that I'm, keeping an eye on for every soldier that I see. I'm just like, oh, you feel sick, so it's not something that I personally see, although Johanna might have some stories of people that have had adverse reactions either on the spot or very quickly afterwards.
I mean, our community is really small, so word spreads quickly when something happened. I mean, it could be really small. And this is how it's almost like a little bit like high school. But I've heard of guys getting vaccinations in the morning and then being forced to go on rough marches, and those can be really long. You're carrying 80 pounds on your back. Those guys collapsing, and then, or if they're immediately after vaccination, they don't feel well, so they just throw ibuprofen at them and say, go about your day, So it's just a wide range of things that you hear in our community, and sometimes people act like, oh, it's totally normal. It's like any vaccination reaction. Oh, it's totally normal. But these are adults. We can actually say, hey, I don't feel good, or immediately after, what did you do this morning? Oh, I got this. I went and got my shot, went to the commissary, got lunch, and now I'm like completely bedridden. And so it's just one of those things where once you wake up to the things that can happen during vaccination, it's, we need to support the people that are fighting for our rights. So as a spouse, I need to support my spouse and help him help him support his rights, because the government doesn't own your body. Just because you sign on the dotted line does not mean that the government owns you. Okay, so I think that's something that needs to be drilled into our heads. Just because you're a service member does not mean that the government owns you. Okay, and I will support you in your fight, and I hope and pray that your spouse supports you in that fight as well, because the government may own a lot of things, but they don't own your body.
And this is why I appreciate you guys doing this. I hear it all the time. We have no more rights. We've signed it away. We have to do this in order to serve. So thank you for coming on and letting people know that there is a way to exempt yourself. It is a process. But I know when we spoke, you said we have to be incredibly articulate. You can't just download these citations and say, okay, this is my exemption. So James, when you went through the process, can you describe the questions that were asked and how well do you have to know these laws in order to get your exemption going?
Yeah, so when I had my initial talk with that NCOIC, he had no idea what religious exemption was. I mean, he may have heard of it, but he had no idea what the process was for him to authorize me to skip out on the anthrax shot that day. So I told him, hey, this is code, what is it, AR, in your system. It's supposed to be code AR, which is administrative refusal. And this covers your religious exemption. So all you need to do is put AR in my MedPros, and it should come up as an exemption. I should be good to go today. And he's like, okay, well, let me look here. I'll give it the old college try. And then he looked and he's like, oh, look, there's the code AR. So let me go ahead and press this thing for you, and you should be good to go, Sergeant. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. So I went on my merry way that day. As far as talking to the PA was unversed in completing counselings for religious exemptions. So I had to educate him on that process. I gave him a very template counseling, which covered the three main areas that you're required to cover, which is the specific information about the disease is concerned, which is what you're requesting exemption from, the specific vaccine information, including the product constituents, benefits, and risks. So I had all of that covered, and the potential risks of infection incurred by unimmunized individuals, and that's the third topic. So I said, hey, if I get sick with something, you just quarantine me and see what happens. I mean, that's how I explained it. I was just like, there's multiple ways to deal with it other than, just letting me hang around the other guys. If you're worried about these other guys catching whatever I may or may not catch, then, there's ways to deal with that.
So they have to go in with the codes, knowing the codes basically like the back of their hand, because you have to know your rights. That's what happens with anything. We go to our schools, we enroll our children, we have to know our rights instead of just reciting what we've memorized. So they want you to know how you contract the illness, what you can do to, quarantine the illness, and what's in the vaccine. Is that the basics of what they need to go in fully informed on what they're getting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and just real quick, do you know how many vaccines are required off the top of your head? And last time I counted was like 21, but that's not counting the boosters.
I'm not.
We tried to find his vaccine record. I remember him showing it to me, and it was like 5 pages back to back, listed. I was like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh. I was flabbergasted. Like, I was speechless. I've never seen. I mean, our daughter's fully vaccinated, and when I see hers, I cry a little bit because I did not even realize how many that she got. So when I saw his, I was just like, there are no words. There are no words. And when it's kind of personal, but when James came back from deployment, and then we were trying for our second child, I saw the fertility specialist, and he said, and almost verbatim, a lot of guys come back from deployment trying to have kids, and they cannot.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was like, I mean, this is before I started looking into vaccination, but like, I kind of like go back to that, like, why are they coming back and they cannot have kids? Like, what's going on?
I hear that a lot, especially from the women. They come back infertile. Lots of of issues going on. This is kind of why you guys are kicking off my week of talking to our veterans and thanking them for what they've done for us, and also letting people know what's happening. I think we all forget that we're so focused on children, we don't realize that you, James, are our first line of vaccines. I mean, the ACIP has already approved it for first responders. They've approved it for children should an emergency happen. So this is, the anthrax vaccine. So this is incredibly scary. And I, again, thank you for coming on here. And I know you guys, it's a lot to go on this kind of platform and say something. even though I'm being shadow banned, but that's okay. It'll catch up. Is there anything else that you want to tell the followers that are? I mean, I have a lot of new people who are not following me, and they're veterans. This is a huge topic right now. So, is there anything else you'd like to tell them?
So there's one thing that you should know is that, I'm a Christian believer. However, it does not apply only to Christian believers. It applies to atheists also. If you're an atheist, you can still get a religious exemption for vaccinations, even though you have a system of not believing in God. You can still get a religious exemption.
Those are harder to fight, though, so be prepared. Just be prepared for for the extra fight or pushback that you're going to have simply because you're an atheist.
So on what basis would they? I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead. Let your follow-up there.
What basis would it be for an atheist to file a religious exemption?
It's because that you cannot be, what's that?
I printed out some extra things.
Oh, perfect.
So, I'm just going to read it because this is, this particular section was put together by one of our brothers in arms, well, his brother in arms, who also went through the exemption. He went through a religious one, but he had the help of an attorney go through the Army Regulation 40-562. He had the help of an attorney decipher some of the things that he wasn't sure about. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to read what he wrote in regards to those who don't believe in a God as far as an exemption.
Okay.
So it says, if you are pursuing a religious exemption but are not part of an organized religion, you are still able to get your exemption granted, but be prepared for a much greater fight. This is because AR 600-20 states in Section 5-6, paragraph H, that you need supporting certification signed by an authorized personal religious counselor. The counselor attests that the applicant is an active member in good standing of the religious group, adheres to tenets consistent with the espoused religious beliefs, and the religious group has a tenet or belief opposed to immunizations. Now, although the regulation states that you might be able to fight that statement on the grounds of a Supreme Court decision, Frazee versus Illinois Department of Employee, I think that's Security, 489 U.S. 829 from 1989. So you'd have to look that up for more information for like the specifics. But basically, it states that someone who is not part of a mainstream religion cannot be told that their personal religion is not real or does not apply. That means that you will be fighting for a religious exemption on the grounds that it is against some sort of personally held religious belief, which is not in line with any mainstream religious organization. Technically legal, but hard to fight. So it's just something that you will need to get like the full court ruling on that, mm-hmm. and then that will be what you can use if you.
That makes sense. It does. It makes sense. I mean, we think like these things don't apply to us or to you, and it's nice that you guys did your homework on this. I really appreciate it. All right, so I'm on a Zoom, so I only get a little bit of time on these. But is there anything else that you guys would like to cover before we wrap it?
Just a quick statement. I'll just say that don't be dissuaded by this 90% plus immunization rate that your command needs to maintain. Like, don't let that dissuade you from putting in your exemption. Like, put it in. Like, don't be hindered by like, oh well, if I bring their numbers below 90%, I'm gonna be targeted for discrimination. They're gonna say no because I'm gonna make their numbers below 90%. Just go ahead and put it in and don't worry about it.
So they do have a percentage also, just how we have a percentage in schools. You guys have to have 90% vaccination status in order for no commanders to have the roof fall on them, correct?
Yes.
I would also make sure that you know the Civil Rights Act. I would actually print that out for you to read if you're not familiar with that, and also that the military also is under the Equal Opportunity So if they deny you, you can file an equal opportunity complaint and complain against the Army, the Air Force, Marines, Navy, Coast Guard, that if they deny you because based on religious beliefs, you can cite Civil Rights Act, and you can file an official employment opportunity complaint against them.
Wow. Do you know anybody who's been successful?
Yes.
Oh, that's a beautiful
All
thing.
all branches.
All branches.
Yes.
All right, that's amazing. Thank you guys so much. So many people are telling you thank you. Thank you for speaking up. I know it's incredibly hard to do.
Yeah. It's not impossible. So just keep fighting it, and you will be getting pushback, especially since this is out there now, officially out there. The more exemptions that try to get processed, you'll probably get more pushback. So you keep pushing back, and just know your rights and be eloquent about it, and I think you'll be okay. So.
Well, thank you. Everybody's saying thank you for your service. So I appreciate both of you guys. I know you're in it too. You know, you're the backbone of it. So sorry, no offense, but we all know.
He does the heavy lifting.
Yeah. You're the planner. So thank you again so much. We're putting it up so it's live, and it's going to go on the blog, and it's going to be shared everywhere. Yeah, so thank you guys again, and we'll keep in touch. And if you guys have any other things you want to talk to us about, you let me know, and I'll put you on.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to end this real quick. So thanks, guys. I'm going to end this live.